you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for calling me, and I'm particularly delighted to be called in a debate on technology and public service, of which more later. And I'd like to congratulate all the other Maiden speakers today. It's clear that we're going to have not just a good Parliament, but a great Parliament. I come to this place from Tunbridge Wells, and Tunbridge Wells is famous for a few things, not least the abilities of its residents in writing to the newspapers letter pages. And of course I'm speaking of this phrase, disgusted of Tunbridge Wells, and I can assure my honourable friends, as someone who spent the last 2 months perusing the inbox of the MP for Tunbridge Wells, that my constituents have lost none of their ability for forceful expression with the pen. But this phrase, disgusted of Tunbridge Wells, does actually confuse me, because why is it that they are disgusted? For they live in the best constituency in the country. And honourable members who don't believe me, I invite them to come to Tunbridge Wells this September, later this month, when we are hosting the World Cup for Subbuteo. And this is a big deal. It's previously in Rome, it's now in Tunbridge Wells, and honourable members may not know that Subbuteo is actually from Tunbridge Wells, so we invented it, and the factory that used to create the kits that were sent out to everyone. I can see some recognition from some honourable members. Perhaps there are some aficionados of Subbuteo in the House today, Madam Deputy Speaker. And so because of this fact, we from Tunbridge Wells are particularly proud of being able to say that this September football will be coming home to Tunbridge Wells. Honourable members may be pleased at this late hour, and I can see I've got 8 minutes left to go, Madam Deputy Speaker, will be pleased that I won't give a long geographical survey of my entire constituency. Suffice it to say that the villages which make up the greater part of my constituency are the most beautiful anywhere, and the towns, of which we have 3, Southborough, Paddockwood and Tunbridge Wells, have had visitors of 4 centuries for sport, for recreation, so hop picking in the case of Paddockwood, and of course Royal Tunbridge Wells, where people come to take the water. And perhaps our most famous visitor who came to take the water was Henrietta Maria, who was Queen of England and wife of King Charles III. Now, Henrietta, if I can call her that, was passing through a period of infertility, so it is said, and she came to Tunbridge Wells to take the waters, and shortly after fell pregnant with King Charles II. And we know that King Charles II, of course, restored the monarchy, or was restored to the monarchy, and shortly thereafter we had the Bill of Rights, the Glorious Revolution. And so if you'll forgive me, Madam Deputy Speaker, for a slight bit of hyperbole, I think we can safely say that Tunbridge Wells is the source of modern British democracy. It is, of course, right that I speak of my immediate predecessor, Greg Clark, who I know is a good friend of yours. Greg was, in addition to serving the Crown as a minister, he was a chair of a select committee. He was the epitome of the constituency MP. Now, many of us have spent the last couple of years knocking on doors around our constituency and speaking to future constituents. And as you know, when you knock on doors, you tend to hear the same things, and themes seem to come out. And of course, the theme in Tunbridge Wells was that Greg Clark is a good bloke. And you'd knock on a door, and you'd say, "Well, how are you going?" And they go, "Well, we had this big family problem, and he spoke to the relevant government department, and his office went above and beyond." And you think, "Oh, a bit deflated." You go to the next door, and they'd say, "Well, actually, he was wonderful. He not only did he solve the problem, he came to see us personally to explain what he had done." It was utterly disheartening campaigning, I can tell you, over the last 2 years. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, I was utterly delighted when he stepped down. I wish him the very best of luck. He's going to run a technology innovation cluster at the University of Warwick, so perhaps the Secretary of State would like to reach out to him. He's a good guy to know. So I would like to finish on a serious topic, Madam Deputy Speaker, and that is defence of His Majesty's realm. And it's been said so much that it fades into the background, but the world that we live in today is more unpredictable and more dangerous than it has been since the last 80 years. And of course, it is the things that we understand. It's geopolitics. There is a perceived or a relative decline of Western power, and we have, previously middling powers jockeying for space and seeking to rewrite the international order. And I don't need to name countries for honourable members to know who I'm talking about. But overlaid across that, there are a number of global trends like climate change, demography, migration, technology regulation. And as geopolitics pulls us apart, of course, all of these challenges require that we work together. So it's quite a difficult needle to thread. Now, with this going on, the state of the UK military is dire. We have an army that cannot deploy a division. We have an air force that cannot defend its own airfields. And we have a navy that cannot crew its own ships. And sitting above that concerning situation is a hole where British strategy should sit. And I stand here as someone who spent 2 years at the sharp end of British strategy in Afghanistan. And I can tell you, Madam Deputy Speaker, when you're fighting a war at that level and bullets are flying and people are dying, it breaks you when there's no strategy, when the country that has sent you there does not have a strategy. And this is a non-partisan point, because all three main parties sat in government, of course including my own, during the period that we were in Afghanistan. But Afghanistan, excuse me, can I have some water? But Afghanistan is not... what happened in Afghanistan is not unique for British foreign policy. Well, thank you. Okay. Afghanistan is not unique when it comes to British foreign policy. We haven't really had a clear strategy for 30 years. And so it is a very, very good thing that the government is initiating a strategic defence review. But previous defence reviews have maintained this illusion, really, that Britain is a global power without giving sufficient resources to back up those ideas and those policy goals that we're trying to follow. And so I have a piece of advice for the government. Before, in this review, the government starts talking about planes and tanks and ships, and that is technology in public service, they must have a clear idea of what British strategy is. And by clear, I mean realistic. And of course, realistic means matching your goals and your aims to the resources that you are willing to put in it. And that's quite a difficult question to ask, which is why successive governments have fudged it for the last few decades. And so there is an easier question that the government can answer. And if it can answer this question, the rest of the review will flow smoothly. And that question is, in military terms, is Britain a global expeditionary military power? Or is it a power dedicated to ensuring regional security in the Euro-Atlantic area? So that's the area from the Arctic to the Mediterranean and from Greenland to Suez. And you can't do both. You can only do one. So if the government can answer that question accurately and clearly, then all of the other subsidiary questions will follow on. Questions like, who our friends are and who our allies are.